Now, this evening, we are very, very happy to have Mr. Pintard joining us live via Zoom out of Grand Bahama. Good evening to you, Michael Pintard.
Good evening, Shenique. Thank you very much for your invitation, and looking forward to chatting with you and the Bahamian people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll tell you this. Let's just start here first. Then we'll go into some of what the leader of the opposition had to say. You guys, how is Grand Bahama feeling? You won 3 of the 5 seats, but how is the Grand Bahama feeling? And in your estimation, overall, the FNM from that defeat on September 16th?
Let me begin with the second question first. I mean, naturally, there is a significant disappointment in the outcome of the election. And the fact that a tremendous amount of supporters did not turn out to vote is cause for concern. And so nationally, there is a careful evaluation taking place to determine what went wrong in this election. So there are a number of postmortems being conducted. Naturally, the organization itself is conducting a postmortem. There are members of the team that have hired professional organizations to impartially evaluate what accounted for the loss and the extent to which we lost the majority that we had enjoyed over the past 4.5 years. Most of the discussions that ought to take place should flow out of that careful evaluation. So we have anecdotal evidence of what some of the concerns were, because all of us who knocked on doors heard from voters in terms of what were the issues that concerned them.
Anecdotally, what are some of the concerns you're hearing?
Well, I don't want to be sidetracked yet anecdotally, because I'd be happy to come to that, Shenique, but I want to make the point that it is important to get some empirical data so that we are able to speak more definitively. So in short, there's significant disappointment. But what is also true is that we are responding to this in a very sober way.
Well, I'll tell you this, Michael Pintard. Yes, I'm happy to hear that, because I've never heard before a defeat, the Free National Movement doing this. Normally, the Progressive Liberal Party goes in, they bring in international consultants and bodies, and they make public. So we await the public report as to why the Free National Movement was so just convincingly defeated at the polls. And as you mentioned, not only defeated, but I mean, significant amounts of voters did not turn up. And that's something perhaps that we will get into briefly, but that you think, just you initially, why they did not turn up. But let's just talk about the significance of this sort of this difference in the amount of parliamentarians that will be in the lower chamber come the opening of Parliament, and the difference. Do you really feel, I hear the former Prime Minister, now leader of the opposition, being extremely strong and obviously well-intentioned to say what he and his team, including yourself, will be able to do. Are you convinced?
Shenique, as I mentioned, that I think a lot of FNMs are quite sober in their response to what has happened. So they're looking at the figures. The figures suggest that notwithstanding the loss of so many seats, the net increase in voters that supported the Progressive Liberal Party is not a massive number. I think some persons pegged the number somewhere around 7,000 additional voters. So we're not talking about a massive increase in terms of support for the Progressive Liberal Party. It is clear the public was disenchanted with both major organizations. And I think that's in part reflected by some of the numbers that went to independent candidates. So this is a really an important moment for both organizations, the FNM, the PLP, to pause and ask the question, why are Bahamians disaffected with the leadership and the governance of both administrations? I think it's incorrect to simply blame the public for what has happened to us. I think it's important for us to do some soul searching and ask, what can we do better to serve the persons who are essentially our bosses? We are temporary employees. And any leadership, whether it's those in government or those in the Free National Movement that wish to govern, any discussion without paying attention to the message that voters have sent to both organizations will be a mistake. And so I think FNMs ought not be dismayed, because clearly we know the pattern of voting of our base. Our base has told us on several occasions before that if we are not pleased with the governance style or the substance of decisions that are made, we stay at home.
Well, then the thing is, I'm happy, Michael Pintard, that you're taking it there, because then we had that sort of set for the second segment, but that's okay. Let's let you and I go and flow in the normal order of things, because the thing is, I don't care if it was 10 people that showed up at the polls, 7 said, I will vote for PLP because the FNM is somehow displeasing me. How can the FNM correct that? And what is it that the FNM has done to displease the public so much? Because the thing is, you don't blame the public for not showing up. I think you blame those who offered themselves under the banner of the Free National Movement for not either being appealing for those incumbents, for not doing what it is they had to do in the last 4 years to cause the people to want to come out to support. That is where the blame lies.
Well, I think there are several things we ought to look at. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, there is a need for us to get the empirical data so that this is not mere speculation. But what are some of the things we would have heard? One of the things we heard is that persons felt in the midst of a COVID period that they were uncertain about safety protocols and what that meant to their health as they took a risk to come out and vote. And so I think that's something that has to be evaluated. And obviously, hindsight is 2020. But could we have looked at more closely at some of the best practices in other jurisdictions and made a determination that an additional hour be added on for those persons who were quarantined? Could we have done a better job clearly clarifying that we are not saying that persons with COVID are voting, but persons who were quarantined and who would be given a particular time? Could have been the last hour of voting. It could have been a separate polling division. There are a number of things that various jurisdictions did. And so the question we would have to answer is, could that have made a difference in terms of the numbers? That's one. Two, Bahamians, I believe, for several elections are no longer enamored by a presidential style election. I think that they are looking for a team that has multiple talented members that have the capacity to improve the conditions that Bahamians find themselves in and others who have called the Bahamas home. Mm-hmm. And so it is important that we reflect going forward the depth of our individual teams and the range of talents that are available, and also the generational involvement, young members of your team, middle age, veteran politicians, and all working in tandem in a collaborative manner, running an inclusive program that values those that have served 10, 15, 20 years ago, bringing them under the tent. Those that are new to our organizations, and saying to them that we welcome you, and notwithstanding the fact that you haven't been there 30 years ago, we embrace you and your talents and intend to utilize it so that we can improve the condition of our people.
How deep and capable?
Certainly I believe the public is looking for collaborative, inclusive leadership, and where they perceive that is not at work, there is a disconnect with voters, because bear in mind,
exactly,
each of us have our sphere of influence,
yes,
and each member of parliament or senator or trustee or chairperson have their network of people who they have the capacity to influence.
Michael Pintard, there's been no secret of little factions within the FNM, but with this smaller grouping, within seven members, can in the lower chamber, can you all come together and be the force that's necessary?
So Shenique, to put that in context, there are factions in both of the major political parties.
Of course,
when
yes.
you are in government, if you hope to maintain that, then the role of all of the leadership is to ensure that you get everyone to appreciate that they are valued and that their opinions matter, and that when we identified a shared goal, the only way we're going to get to that shared goal is if we are working in a coordinated manner and we are motivated to do the work. In the lower chamber, I believe that we have the capacity to do that. I think we are working with professionals who appreciate that the work we have to do on behalf of the Bahamian people should not be motivated by how we feel.
Anything else,
so,
yes.
So how we feel is secondary to us doing the job. And so let me say this very clearly. A part of our job is to hold the government's feet to the fire, and that is to evaluate their legislative agenda, the policies that they will propose, the projects that they will implement, and the programs, the ongoing initiatives that they have, and to suggest in a constructive way the adjustments they ought to make. We should be about the business in the House of Assembly of ensuring continuity in government. Continuity in government means that we're not playing to the crowd by in every instant raising hell about every single legislative policy, project or program decision.
Yes.
But we are looking at what things can be improved by our input. And our input means not the 7 in the House, the entire organization that we represent, who we should be talking to glean their best ideas. So that's the first thing.
Well, listen, we are going to listen. I love talking to you because you are rich with information. I hope you are rich with information of what we can expect in the Senate, and also that F&M convention next month. We have more with Marco City MP Michael Pintard after this break. You are watching Beyond the Headlines. Tonight I'm speaking with Marco City MP Michael Pintard. Of course, it's on the eve, well, sort of ish, almost ish, of the Free National Movement's convention next month. And he's talking about, of course, the opposition party's performance in Parliament. A part of that is the performance in the upper chamber, the Senate. Now, Michael, let's talk about the 4 members of the Senate. I know Darren Henfield, the former cabinet minister, leads that bunch. There's Maxine Seymour, who was a candidate in the recent general election. There is Reuben Ramming, who was also a candidate, former member of Parliament, as well, around the table. And then there is Vienna Gardner, as far as we are informed. Your thoughts about what those 4 can bring to the Senate, apparently among a very strong bunch.
Shenique, if you forgive me, please, Shenique, just allow me just to set the proper context. And I just want to be very, very quick with respect to this. As I mentioned at the outset of the show, postmortem is going to be conducted, and there's anecdotal evidence of what the issues were. That is, 1, we need to be collaborative. We need to be inclusive. We need to go in a different direction. So let me be absolutely clear about that. The public is expecting that the Free National Movement is going to return to the House of Assembly heading in a new direction as an organization. And so what you would hear in terms of my contributions in the House is casting vision in terms of where we ought to be going, certainly as an organization, but certainly as a government in waiting. Mm-hmm. And so we have had 4.5 years to make our case. We've shared that case. The public did not accept that case. And so, Shenique, we can't go back into the House and presume we're going to pick up from where we left off. Mm-hmm. We have to say to the public, we heard you. We heard you say we want us to govern, to behave in different ways, to govern with humility, certainly to be collaborative in what we do, to involve F&Ms from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to draw on good ideas coming from the opposition, from PLPs, from independents. And so essentially, I intend, and I believe my colleagues intend, to share a message with the public that says, we got you, we heard you, and we felt what you were saying. And on the point I made, there was a comment concerning the quarantine. The point I made relative to in allowing, which the opposition at the time, the PLP wanted, and the government acceded to, permitting quarantined persons to come out and vote. I support it. But we ought to have used best practices in other jurisdictions on how can you safely engage them in the system in a way that the public, the rest of the public, felt safe. And that's why I talked about an hour at the end of the voting period, an additional polling division to allay any fears that persons may have had. So I just wanted to be absolutely clear so that nobody missed the point. But clearly, we have to go in a different direction.
Well, speaking of a different direction, because we'll just slide on over that Senate question. Let's go in a different direction with the FNM leadership. Yeah. Now, it's no secret, you and the other two Grand Bahama members of Parliament have expressed interest in being leader of the Free National Movement and contesting come next month's convention. What does the Free National Movement need that it hasn't done in these last 4.5 years? I know you say we're going to be this, and I'm going to give great contributions, and we're going to show that we're new in these now as opposition. What happened? It slipped because that slipped through the fingers in 4.5 years. What is it the FNM needs now to begin getting the attention of the Bahamian people, those on the fence, those disgusted, those turned off, and those who say, let me just see what they're saying. What needs to happen? Absolutely.
Shenique, it's a wonderful question. Shenique, I believe that any prime minister who sits, for example, the present prime minister, has the benefit of 3 living prime ministers in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. If we're interested in getting out of some of the challenges that we're in, post-Dorian challenges, helping persons in Abaco and Grand Bahama to rebound. If we're going to deal with the downturn in the economy and the contraction of the economy caused by COVID, those are issues that are bigger than any one administration. And so the leadership going forward has to be the kind of leadership that is willing to collaborate with predecessors, whether they wear the colors you wear, or with another prime minister who doesn't or who didn't wear the colors that you wore. So there has to be collaborative leadership. And I do not believe there has been sufficient collaboration across party lines or across terms in government. And so one of the things that I certainly am strongly advocating is let us collaborate with persons who've been there, done that, to find out if they or members of their team in the past have ideas that they're willing to share that can improve our condition. The issues are bigger than any one administration. So that's one thing. That's
going to be a tall feat, Michael Pintard, because Bahamian men, we've only had men so far as prime ministers. You know, y'all like to flex muscles and see which is bigger. And so to come and say to come around the table over a cup of coffee and share ideas, that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah,
Michael, what makes you, Michael Pintard, the best candidate to lead the Free National Movement were you to be successful next month at convention?
Shenique, again, collaborative leadership that's prepared to work with past leadership, those that have arrived recently, and to engage all of them and let them know that they are valued. And so it is important, I believe, to energize the Free National Movement base and to take on board their ideas. The second thing is when you work for the public, you have to communicate with them with a sense of humility. We are temp employees, and so we are employed by this public. And so whether we communicate with them directly in small meetings, in large group meetings, or by way of the media, we have to communicate with that sense of understanding that the public deserves answers on critical questions that they're asking, not just about the substance of what we're doing, but how we are in fact executing. And so that's something that I believe that the new breed of leadership that will emerge in the Free National Movement will in fact bring to the table. And then thirdly, it is important to empower those Bahamians who have been historically disadvantaged. In the Free National Movement, there are persons who've been passed over administration after administration, and we have an obligation to make sure that they are not marginalized. But in the course of empowering them, so for example, the contractors who never seem to get a break, it is important to hold workshops for them, to help them learn how to register, how to get your TIN number, how to fill out bid papers, so that you are part of a pool of talented Bahamians who are pursuing and can achieve opportunities. But in so doing, If you are in government, you don't do that to the extent that you disadvantage everybody else. Because again, it is a small country with mixed households of PLPs and FNM. So you want to be balanced, but it does not make sense that if we come in and we do not empower people who have been historically disadvantaged in this country, and which is why I'm particularly concerned about the wholesale release of a number of persons shortly after election. Those persons who are purely political appointees should expect that they should have their resignations letters prepared in the event that a new administration coming in. But that does not mean that everyone hired in the last 4.5 years are political appointees. And so if we're going to have continuity in government, we cannot have the mindset or political culture that the moment you come to office, you start replacing people without even doing a proper assessment on whether or not you're headed down the right road.
That is something I addressed.
We have to do better.
That is something I addressed last night, the victimization. Now, if you're a political appointee, please don't stand in the way of a new administration. And if you are outstanding, they will retain you. I firmly agree with that, Michael
They ought to retain you.
They ought to retain you.
But Princeton LaRota is outstanding as a Bahamian, as a consummate public servant.
Now, Quinton LaRota, of course, we're talking about director of labor.
With any political administration. So I'm just saying they should. And I think there's some talented persons in this new administration who has a sense of fair play, who are decent human beings, and they ought to make sure that the culture of the organization of the PLP does not hold them hostage, and so they must let their voices be heard to say, listen, we are here for continuity. We are here to make sure that we're building a meritocracy.
Michael
those
Pintard,
that are talented, notwithstanding when they were hired, should continue to work.
Yeah, in 2017 when the FNM won, the FNM didn't go this route of
no.
I don't care how able a LaRota is, send him home or redirect him. The FNM didn't do that?
No, what I've seen in these early days is really a significant departure. Have there been instances where it occurred? I'm sure there have been, Shenique. So I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we cannot foster a culture where people are releasing voice notes, where they're going into offices asking people, are you still here? You know you're all going. No, we have to be mature as a democracy, and we have to appreciate we're one people. The kind of culture that we fostered in Marco City is we did not want to focus on colors. We thought it makes sense to empower all Bahamians to meet their needs, to meet people's needs where they work. And that is precisely why a swing seat, much like St. Barnabas, a swing seat that has changed hands for 4 consecutive elections, that we've retained it 2 times in a row with the largest margin that exceeded even the 9 safe FNM seats. In this case, we only won 5 of them. But we won by 981 votes, which exceeded all of the other seats. And I think a part of it, Shenique, is because we are seeking to foster a different political culture in the country.
Yes, you have been
that I can be committed to the FNM culture.
You have to be commended. I'll tell you this because that is what you've done. In Marco City and Grand Bahama, you have reached across to every person there, including your opponents and perhaps your strongest opponents, and you've worked with them for the last 4.5 years. You have absolutely done that. Michael Pintard, then, what qualifies you to lead? You, Aram Lewis, Kwesi Thompson. I'm just dealing with the 3 Grand Bahama representatives. I'm not sure who else has thrown their hat in the ring, but certainly the 3 of you have made known that, listen, you are interested in potentially pursuing the leadership position next month in convention. What qualifies you?
Shenique, I'm collaborative. I'm inclusive. I believe it is important to work intergenerationally to ensure that young persons within the organization that I'm a part of, that they are in fact given opportunities in all of the decision-making bodies in the organization, that they are resourced. In all of our political organizations, there should be a line item in the budget that empowers young people to take the message of the organization in the manner they deem to be important to the rest of the country. They should not be under-resourced and yet complemented because of their talents. They must be equipped to do the work that is required. In addition, I believe that it is important to ensure that women participate in large measure in the decision-making in our organization. We cannot mouth that we are committed to the empowerment of women, and when you look at the decisions that we make, women are grossly they are not factored in sufficiently. They are underrepresented in the various organs of the organization. Again, I believe it is absolutely important that we be intentional about the inclusion of women in the decision-making process. The other thing that I think is important is really you just have to have a spirit of humility. That you have to appreciate that at the end of the day, we are temp employees. We are working for this public. And so we ought to engage this public. So we can't continue to go into the House of Assembly and indicate that when we speak, we are speaking on behalf of a population where we are not keeping our office open. We are open 6 days a week in Marco City. We hold town meetings to have the views of those who we represent reflected in the decisions that we make.
Michael Pintard, that is why you were successful at the polls again. Many of you all get elected and then you go and try, you enjoy a mojito under the coconut tree on the beach. You forget the people, but not you. You did not do that. Listen, as we near the November election, I certainly want to have more conversations with you because I want to know what the mood is headed into this F&M convention. And also, of course, to hear more from you, should you be successful in your bid, and you and the others, of course, to become leader of the Free National Movement. Michael Pintard, Member of Parliament for Marco City. By the way, you're ready for the opening of Parliament tomorrow?
Yes, I am. Me and my family are here. My daughter is still in Grand Bahama, so I want to say hi, Michaela. And I want to say to all of the members of the public service whose promotions have been stalled, that it is most unfortunate that this is happening. I wish we had 8 additional months so that we could have settled these issues. For those persons who are experiencing anxiety because they're wondering if their jobs are going to be terminated, I apologize that you find yourself in this position. It should not have happened. But I want to say that we will stand with you. We will defend your right to earn a living, to support your family, and I'm appealing to the men and women who you have given an opportunity to govern, to let us do the decent thing, to protect Bahamians of all political colors. And the truth is, you do not know what person's political colors are who have been given a job, whether it's over the last 6 years or 4.5 years. And we should do the decent thing in ensuring that there's continuity in government, that Bahamians can feed their family regardless of their political persuasion. And so, Shenique, I look forward to talking with you further. And I want to say to the residents of Marco City that I am grateful to all of you, no matter your political color, for standing with our team who is committed to developing this community and by extension, Grand Bahama and the rest of the Bahamas.
Michael Pintard, thank you so much, Member of Parliament for Marco City in Grand Bahama, one of 3 elected in the September 16th general election. Also an interest in pursuing the leadership of the Free National Movement in convention next month. We'll talk more with him, of course, as that convention nears. Thank you once again.
Let's go in a different direction, Shenique.
Absolutely. Thank you once again. Listen.